My husband let me take the blame in court, but I brought something he never expected. The courtroom was full. Not just occupied, full. Every seat taken. Reporters lining the back wall. A few familiar faces from my neighborhood. People who once smiled at me now watching like I was a cautionary tale. I stood at the defendant's table. Alone. My husband, Victor, sat behind me. Not beside me. Behind me. That detail mattered more than anyone realized. Mrs. Hale, the prosecutor began, pacing slowly, you're asking this court to believe that you had no knowledge of the financial transfers made under your name? I could feel the weight of every eye in that room. Judging, measuring, deciding. Victor didn't move, didn't speak, didn't defend me. Because this was the version of the story he had agreed to. The one where I made a mistake. The one where I misunderstood numbers. The one where I signed things I didn't read. A weak defense, but a convenient one. For him. Answer the question, the judge said. I lifted my head. Steady. Calm. I understood everything I signed, I replied. A ripple moved through the room. Victor shifted slightly. Just slightly. Then I reached into my bag and placed a small black flash drive on the table. I was waiting, I said, for this moment. And for the first time, Victor leaned forward. The prosecutor frowned. That's new evidence? He asked. Yes, I said. My voice didn't shake. It never had, even when it should have. Victor stood halfway, leaning toward his lawyer, whispering urgently. I didn't turn around, but I didn't need to. I knew that tone. Control slipping. This evidence was not disclosed during discovery, his attorney objected. It wasn't necessary, I replied. That got attention. The judge leaned forward slightly. Explain. I folded my hands. Because until today, I said, the narrative being presented was incomplete. Carefully chosen words. Not defensive. Not emotional. Just precise. Victor finally spoke. Elena, what are you doing? His voice carried more concern than anger. That told me everything. I turned slowly this time. Just enough to meet his eyes. Correcting the story, I said. And then I looked back at the judge. With your permission, I added, resting my fingers lightly on the flash drive, I'd like to present a full account. The courtroom didn't breathe, because somewhere, instinctively, they knew this wasn't a defense. This was a shift. 6 months before the trial, I had already lost my marriage. I just hadn't said it out loud yet. It started with silence. Victor was always meticulous, structured, precise, predictable. Until he wasn't. Late nights became normal. Phone calls moved outside. Passwords changed. Not dramatically. Subtly. Enough to create distance, not suspicion. But I notice patterns. It's part of what I do. I work in compliance auditing. Irregularities aren't just numbers to me. They're behavior. One evening, I found the first document. It was printed, carelessly left in his study. A transfer authorization. My name on it. My signature. Only, I hadn't signed it. That was the moment everything shifted. Not because I was shocked, but because I understood exactly what it meant. This wasn't a mistake. It was preparation. And I had just been assigned a role. Without my consent. Mrs. Hale, the judge said, you may proceed. I nodded, then turned slightly toward the screen behind me. The prosecution's case, I began, rests on a series of financial transfers executed under my name. The prosecutor stiffened. I continued. These transfers are real. The accounts exist. The signatures appear valid. I paused, letting that settle. But what hasn't been examined, I added, is authorship. Victor's lawyer stood. Objection. Sit down, the judge said sharply. Interesting. Very interesting. I picked up the flash drive. This contains a timeline, I said. Not just of transactions, but of access points, device IDs, and authentication logs. Now the room was paying attention. Because this wasn't emotional testimony. This was data. Structured. Verifiable. Dangerous. I didn't discover this by accident. I continued. I was looking for it. And, behind me, Victor stopped moving. The first thing I did wasn't confront him. That would have been emotional. I needed clarity. So I started small. I checked my own accounts, login history, device records. Most people never do. They trust the surface. I don't. What I found was interesting. Access from devices I didn't own. At times I wasn't even home. Locations that didn't align. It wasn't just unauthorized. It was systematic. Then I did something Victor never expected. I said nothing. For weeks. I watched. I documented. Every login. Every transfer. Every inconsistency. Because evidence isn't built in confrontation. It's built in silence. Back in the courtroom, I inserted the flash drive. The screen flickered, then displayed a clean interface. Simple. Chronological. Professional. This is a mirrored extraction of account access logs, I said. Verified through an independent forensic analyst. The prosecutor leaned forward. Victor's lawyer looked unsettled. Good. As you can see, I continued, multiple transactions were authorized from a device registered under my credentials. I clicked. The screen zoomed in. But the device ID, I added, doesn't belong to me. Murmurs. Quiet. But growing. Victor shifted again. I didn't look at him. Not yet. That device, I said, clicking again, is registered to a secondary network. Pause. Then the final click. Located in my husband's office. The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was realization. The prosecutor stood slowly. Are you suggesting? I'm stating, I corrected gently, that every transaction attributed to me originated from a device I did not control. Victor finally stood. This is ridiculous, he said. You're manipulating. I haven't finished, I replied. Still calm. Still steady. The judge raised a hand. Sit down, Mr. Hale. And he did. Because now, this wasn't his stage anymore. There was one more thing. The most important thing. The piece that made everything irreversible. I clicked again. An audio file appeared. I didn't plan to use this, I said. That was true. I had hoped I wouldn't need to. But hope isn't strategy. Evidence is. This recording, I continued, was captured 3 months ago. Victor's head snapped up. And for the first time, I saw fear. Real fear. The audio played. His voice. Clear. Unfiltered. She won't question it, he said. She trusts paperwork more than people. A pause. Then laughter. I just need enough time to move everything. Once it's done, the liability sits with her. The room shifted. Not dramatically, but decisively. Because betrayal sounds different when you hear it. Not imagined. Not interpreted. Proven. The prosecutor sat down. Slowly. Because the case he had built was collapsing. And not because it was weak, but because it was incomplete. The investigation reopened. Immediately. Not quietly. Not internally. Publicly. Because now, there was no choice. Victor's accounts were frozen. His access revoked. Just like that. Control. Gone. His reputation fractured next. Colleagues distanced themselves. Not out of judgment, but survival. His partner network collapsed. No one wants to be linked to fraud, especially proven fraud. Socially, the shift was immediate. The same people who once questioned me stopped calling, stopped asking, stopped assuming. Legally, the case reversed. Evidence refiled. Charges reassigned. Names corrected. Truth repositioned. Victor tried to negotiate. Reduce impact. Limit damage. But intent, once proven, doesn't negotiate. The final hearing was brief. Because clarity shortens arguments. And evidence ends them. He was convicted. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. But completely. I didn't celebrate. That would have required anger. And I didn't feel that anymore. I filed for divorce the same week. Not out of revenge, but alignment. 3 months later I moved. New space. New silence. Different kind. Peaceful. I returned to work. Not as a victim, but as someone who understood systems. And how they fail. People asked how I stayed calm. I didn't answer. Because calm isn't a trait. It's a decision. Looking back, the betrayal wasn't the hardest part. It was the assumption behind it. That I wouldn't notice. That I wouldn't understand. That I wouldn't act. But I did. Not loudly. Not immediately. But precisely. Because in the end, I wasn't fighting to prove innocence. I was protecting the truth I had always known was mine.